Sweet, so you guys can get another Windows talk. And I guess I'll start out by talking about the biggest thing in the center, which is PowerShell. So, hello? Okay. Yeah, so I was second win statement. Really, all I do all day is I sit down and I write PowerShell pretty much all day long. Like, regardless of which specific component I'm working on, yeah, it's all PowerShell. So yeah, kind of when I started working here at the U, I'd previously been more of a Linux admin, and then ended up as a Windows admin just because doing other jobs is kind of something on the side, and a lot of click, we can all be a Windows admin. But that's super inefficient, even in the Windows world. And so I kind of started looking at ways to make things that I do easier. And so one of the places that I really started on this path was our server build process. Our process was pull up our wiki, do all these things by hand. It took a long time, it was very tedious, it was very annoying, and I'm like, well, this is not a particularly effective way to do things. So I sort of started by just automating small components of our build process, and then just kind of, it took quite a while, but eventually got through most of it. So kind of talk about where our team is sort of at right now. I've kind of kicked our team a bit into GitHub. It's been an interesting process to sort of kind of get people on board. It was a bit slow, so anyone else who's kind of looking to move into this space, if you're not there, be patient. And it is going to kind of take time to get even your own team kind of working on things, and that's fine. So kind of what we have going on right now is, so we have almost all the PowerShell that everyone on our team writes pretty much goes into GitHub. And some of the repos that we have, one of them is basically all our PowerShell modules get managed in there. And then some of our automation around server build and a bunch of other things get put in there that are used basically by everyone on the team at the moment, and kind of in a production sense. And so we've set up webhooks in GitHub, and they basically go, and when we do commits into master, they end up shooting over to Azure, and we've got runbooks sitting in Azure to just listen for those. And then when they get notices that something's been updated, it kind of looks at it and figures out, okay, well, what files have changed? It pulls down those files that have changed, and it then moves them over to whatever server needs those files. So if they need updated modules on some of our systems, they go there. We have a tool server where we pretty much run the bulk of our automation for builds and other things, and so it all just gets drops in there. And part of the reason that I kind of pushed for this was that I'd make a bunch of changes, and then it was getting difficult to get the rest of the team to sort of keep their local stuff up to date when they would run things. And so this just became a much simpler mechanism to make sure that everyone on the team was running the same code base and the same versions of things. It kept things from breaking. So this is designed really just to be sort of a big overall picture of like how everything's been put together in sort of the Windows land, which honestly, the part of what I want to get across with this is it's going to look a whole lot like what you would do if you're in Linux or some other system. The specific details of, whether it's Azure or Chef or something else, I mean, that might be a little bit different, but the themes are all pretty much going to be the same. So Chocolatey is pretty interesting. Chocolatey is package management for applications, but it all pretty much is just PowerShell that runs the installs of whatever the packages are. I built a Chocolatey repo server. It's basically a NuGet server, which is some open source thing. It basically just houses all the packages so they can be pulled from really anywhere, to be honest. So whether we're deploying on-prem, in Azure, at some point we're probably looking at things in Amazon. Like, it won't make any difference where this stuff gets deployed. It'll just pull everything out of Chocolatey. So PowerShell DSC, desired state config, is very much like Chef. I very much enjoy it. That being said, I wouldn't say that I'm 100% sold on just doing DSC. I think there's probably some good arguments for doing Chef as well on Windows stuff, partly just to be able to kind of help leverage expertise from people in the community in the area. When I went to the DevOps days in Minneapolis last summer, I ran one of the open sessions to see was anyone else out there doing Windows and DevOps, and I was happily surprised to find out that was actually more of a community than I realized. I think just for some reason they're not as loud as other groups. But I did talk to one lady who works at Target, and she had very much gone down the chef route, and she was managing a whole bunch of SharePoint. Personally, I want nothing ever to do with SharePoint, but that was her job, and she was, very keen on using Chef. The way that I've been starting to implement DSC actually is in a more chef-like fashion, in that I've set up a pull server. So basically, you spin up a machine, it just needs to know where its pull server is, and it has some tags about who it is. Just goes up to the pull server, pulls down all its desired state config stuff, comes down, and then just configures it. And one of the things that it generally tends to do is it will go and pull packages out of Chocolatey to deploy and make it look like whatever I want it to look like. So, pretty simple. So yeah, part of the idea of why I went with DSC and Chocolatey was to make it not really dependent on where the location is. Also, I've started to play with Docker. And so really this is where you really need things like DSC and Chocolatey if you're going to deal with Docker containers. They are basically core servers or nano servers, so they are GUI, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So if you can't automate your deployment, it's not going to go into a container. So yeah, so using DSC to configure a container is pretty slick. You can push it all in as part of the build of that specific container, which is nice. Or you can have a more generic container that'll just spin up and then go talk to the pull server and be like, well, I guess I'm going to be this thing today. So it's pretty flexible. Yeah, I guess any questions? My whole point in all this is really just to show that if you are a Windows admin, there are a lot of tools that are very similar. So, don't click around, please. Automate if you're doing anything Windows, please automate it. You can use Chef. You can run Ansible, actually. There are tools for Ansible where essentially Ansible will just send all your PowerShell to the server. So Ansible doesn't need to care what PowerShell is. It just knows, here's my cookbook run by, I forget what they call it. And it'll just send it and go. So if you like Ansible, you can use that as well to manage Windows. Jenkins as well. So a lot of the tools actually have gotten to be more agnostic. Yep, go ahead.
Before this and after this, time to build a server. From a request, me submitting a form to getting that to build a server.
Okay, so the way it works now is if you go onto the Google form and submit it, creates a ticket, there's a bunch of variables that are filled in. We copy that, we paste it into our build script, we hit go, and then it depends, maybe like 2 hours later or so, we should get an email saying it's completely built, it's ready to go, it's been registered in Qualys and Zabbix, blah, blah, blah. And yeah.
Before, when you do it,
Oh, God. I mean, it could take hours. Now, some of it was like you do something and then that might take a while, so you go do something else for a while and you got to come back. So it's like a lot of like annoying back and forth. And so depending on how busy you are, what you're doing, I mean, sometimes it could take a couple of days or someone got around to finishing a build. It's a little ridiculous. Yeah, that was the other problem, is not everyone was doing things the same way. They kind of had their own way about doing things occasionally, and somebody would be like, well, I like this, so they'd go off and do that. And we didn't always know about it. Request comes in, this thing is broken, and you're like, why did somebody do that? Oh, one quick note too. So we are, hopefully this week, going to open up our repo for our PowerShell modules. We have been doing a bunch of testing about running our PowerShell modules that we create in PowerShell Core, which runs on Linux. And so a lot of the things we've written is APIs around dealing with Google, like Google Sheets, and automating some of the stuff around that, Zabbix, Qualys, VMware, all sorts of stuff. So anyone who's interested and would like to not reinvent the wheel, we've got some pretty solid stuff, and you are more than welcome to it. And even if you're running Linux, I know a lot of our processes are very similar, and you can feel free to steal our code, because 90% of my code I've stolen from somebody else. So steal code.
Who's next? I think it's me. Hi, John Trammell again here. So my lightning talk stems from something that came up as we were getting the last few hours to this project, and this project being the DevOps conference we're all at today. And it came to our attention that our lists of panelists and speakers was pretty monochromatic. And so what we wanted to do is just take a look at what we did and what we maybe could have done differently, and see what might work better next time. So let's see. All right, here we go. So let's first off, let's give ourselves some pats on the back for what we did right. First off, number one is our planners are diverse. So we represent a large variety of people at the university, fields at the university, and diverse interests and needs. The conference itself is open to the entire university community, so that hopefully is reflected in people's attendance here today. We reached out to the technical communities at the U, and one thing that I think we went out of our way to do is establish a clear code of conduct so that everybody should feel like this is a safe and welcoming space. Like the lightning talks and the panels, there are some low-pressure speaking opportunities. And the final one is obviously the price is pretty good. Free lunch. There is a free lunch today. But then, did what we do, was it enough? I think it was a good start, but we could have gone a little further. First, the code of conduct is great, but we didn't have anything like a diversity statement. And if we had, maybe our panelists, we would have been a little bit more aware of what we were getting ourselves into. And if we'd found ourselves in that position earlier, we might have been able to recruit from those more diverse groups actively. And there's probably other things that we're unaware of, and so we're hoping that if you can think of anything, that you'll grab one of the organizers between speeches or during lunch, and let us know if you have any ideas of what we could have done differently. And I stole that idea. Also, I wanted to point out that there are resources at the university for these things as well. There's an Office for Equity and Diversity. They have a website. They have training. And they have community practice. So if you want to join them, they can, I'm sure, give you face-to-face advice. And they also have an Office for Conflict Resolution that's available for all staff and faculty. And the last thing, I wanted to have a kitten with a gluten-free donut. Since we're running a little bit short on time, let's hold off on those suggestions and we can talk about them between spaces here. And so thank you. Let's see, our next lightning talk is going to be Jake. Yeah, for you, Jake, always. Here we go.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So in the interest of lightning talks, which is supposed to be just very few numbers of slides, there's 0 slides. This is a gist, which you can get to for the Z-Link, from a UMN Z-Link, ZUMN.edu/chef. And the point of this is some of you might be doing some work with jointly managed hosts or not fully managed hosts. Jointly managed hosts here at the university are initially deployed with, are laid out and deployed with Chef, and they do great work for that. A great option past that point is to deploy your application code with Ansible, and I'm a huge fan of deploying with Ansible. You may, we have found in some circumstances, find that some things are harder in Ansible, like Jenkins server is harder in Ansible because there's just a lot of support for the Jenkins Chef recipes. But you may not want to blow away the Chef that's being provided by the OIT Linux guys and gals who are doing a fabulous job of doing that. So if you don't want to blow away this instance that they've put up for you, you can run Chef as a secondary process, and this just will show you how to configure Chef as a secondary process without ruining the other work that's there. And that's it. And if you have questions, I'm around. I'm done.
And we'll make sure to include a link to that on the conference page so that everybody will have easy access to that. The next talk is Kyle, who wanted to talk about PowerShell in RHEL 7. I found a cooler logo. This has that kind of blank stare tux with the Windows logo behind. Here you go.
What, you mean 3 people talking about PowerShell at a DevOps? So real quickly, anyone here not using PowerShell, you should be. Currently, it's gone completely cross-platform, so it's supported on Linux. Red Hat is partnering with Microsoft every day for a lot of their products. Maybe you've seen that they're doing SQL database hosted on Linux in containers. Take your pick of things that are going to be coming. PowerShell, if you're not familiar with it, is really optimized for dealing with structured data, XML, JSON, whatever you really want to throw at it, it can deal with it. The modularization of the things that you can do with it is transportable, it's customizable, and if you don't have something that currently works for you right now, you can just build it yourself. So much leading off of what Travis and I have been doing on the Windows side of things, I'm now leaning into the let's make this happen in the Linux side of things so that whatever we do is going to be available to the community, because we do a lot of stuff that's like, oh, we're just doing REST calls. There's no reason that you can't do REST calls or web calls in Linux natively, but we've already built the things to do it, and you can do it with 5 words, because PowerShell is an object-oriented development language. And if you're not familiar with how it looks, if you guys look at Perl, Perl is very similar in the way that it looks. And you can just go from there. So, I mean, I just like to say that it does just work. And right now it is basically alpha. It's only been around out in the GitHub community for give or take 5-6 months. And the way that you do get it is on the public GitHub community. So Microsoft is huge into GitHub. There's communities out there, they're constantly getting it updated, and they're constantly working with things. So I think in the past 6 months, they're up to version 16. I think that says a lot for the community that's dealing with this from Microsoft on Linux. And that's all I had to say.
I love Perl, but if you want more people to use it, you might not want to compare it to Perl. Just saying. Next up is Tonu with a discussion of how to use Git Desktop. Did you bring a laptop, or I don't have Git Desktop, so. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry.
Start with a little story. So I asked our student employee to make a copy of an existing project and start a new project. And then about an hour later, I get a call saying, "Hey, something's wrong with the form. It's not working anymore." So I go onto a Git desktop, and I see that there were some changes made to the form. And not being entirely sure how these changes came about, I said, "Hey, John, did you make those changes?" And he was already left by then. So I had this question of how do I undo those changes in Git Desktop? And so what you see is a Git Desktop, and I'm looking for a button that says undo uncommitted changes, and I can't find it. I can't find it anywhere. But I do know that if I commit these changes, then I can undo them with a revert. And so this is what I end up doing. I first commit possible John's work, and then I go and I revert possible John's work. And then later on I think, oh, that's not very good practice. My Git would all be full with nonsense. So next slide. I go and I do find a recipe that then includes a right click. And so there's 2 ways you can undo uncommitted changes. One is when you right click on any of the files that have been changed, And there you see there is an option to discard changes. So that's one. And next slide. If you right-click on top where it says 2 changes, if you right-click up there, you can then undo all changes to all the files that were changed and weren't yet committed. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, and I think, what do you think, Debbie? Is the pizza going to be there? Should we go for it? All right. Presumably, here we go. My first Ansible project, what I did for my summer vacation, by John Trammell. All right, so hopefully more of the lessons and less of the gory details. The project began with the NetFiles migration. I'll get into the reason for that. The background is there are 5 servers, development, test, and production environments. It's a Tomcat application. What does it do? It's a file server for Moodle. And they're currently all on RHEL 5. So you're thinking, oh, and we need to redeploy them in RHEL 7. Why would you do such a thing, John? Oh, I didn't see that transition before. The reason is the RHEL 5 migration. We have a lot of RHEL 5 servers that EOL this month. And we've been very busy with migrating a lot of them over to more stable supported systems. Comparing RHEL 6, that goes EOL in 2020, and RHEL 7, 2024. Those are all on Red Hat's website. Those are so far off in the future that we might be more worried about this guy searching through the wasteland. He'll probably want his software managed in SWATM. So here's what we're looking for on RHEL 7. We've got 1 dev host and 2 test hosts and 2 production hosts. There's a lot of duplication amongst these, but they're not exact duplicates. So you can't just clone hosts, even if we had that as an option, which we don't really. So that made me look for deployment tools, and Ansible came to mind. Oh, and this is my interspaced slide here, doing the code monkey thing with a lot of copying, pasting, and fiddling around. I don't do code monkey. That's not fun. And it doesn't, it's not fun, and it's not efficient either. So Ansible. I love my experience with Ansible so far. All the configuration is in text files. That you can reuse a lot of code across environments. All the code and docs go into version control. It's just like any other software development project that you've been working on. Just put it all in Git as pretty much human readable text. The Ansible projects essentially have 2 parts. There's an inventory, and then there's a bunch of rules that apply the inventory to whatever environments you want. So an inventory file might look like this. It lists categories of servers in any file format. So you can see there's a group called web servers with 1 server in it. And then there's a couple of databases. You can see some additional semantics in this inventory file. The first one is there's a range of relational databases, 1 through 4. And the second one, there's an additional variable that's being defined, Ansible user. So these variables get plugged into rules later so that you can customize the behavior based on these different parameters you pass to the environment. On the other side, there's a playbook. So this is a sample mocked up Ansible playbook. That might control what gets installed on the web servers. There's a task that will update your Apache. And then there's a thing called a role, which is more of a reusable component, more like a user-defined function. And in this case, it's kind of just going to bundle your complexity and say, all right, my Tomcat app will know what to do based on the variables that you pass it. Roles are really interesting. As a relative newbie, this is something that I'm learning more details on, but I'll tell you what I do know. They're also formatted in YAML, so they're pretty human readable. Again, they're like functions and libraries. They're reusable. There's a thing called Ansible Gallery, which is a lot like CPAN or PyPy or GEMS, so you can share those with other people in the community. let's see. One nice thing about Ansible is then you can use it at a few different levels. The first thing that I used it on was kind of a throwaway ad hoc command line command for something that you don't even want to put in version control. Simple playbooks are really good for managing just a handful of servers. Maybe you don't want to put those in version control either. But if you're going to be doing a lot of customization with control structures, you probably want to put those in version control. And that's kind of where I am now with the NetFiles project. One great thing about Ansible is that there's a lot of good resources at the university. Let's see, the library, if you don't want to get out and be social, you can go to the library and they have books and ebooks. There's a Slack channel, there's monthly working sessions, there's upcoming a week-long working session, which I don't think I'll be able to attend in its entirety, but I will be there for parts of it. There's a Google group mailing list. There's hacker hours always. And the last one was mentioned earlier that with the GitHub, we can share these roles and reuse them across the university. And I don't know if there's time for questions, but if there are, now's the time. Otherwise, we go up and have pizza. All right, thank you.